Hey everyone, a watershed moment for flight simming has happened. The definitive Gen 4 flight sim, BMS, has been able to overcome a barrier and are able to model new full fidelity planes that are independent of the F-16 avionics. This allows the sim to expand into new planes, but with this comes the need to learn them. The F-15C is the first one to be added to the sim, but this is a hard one for DCS players to learn because there isn't a full fidelity F-15C in that game. This video is covering the BMS F-15, but it is styled in a DCS fashion, so you can get foundational knowledge. By the end of this, you should have enough information to use radios, navigation, and understand the air-to-air workflow, so you can get to target and engage in air-to-air. You should know enough at the end of this to be able to play, while also to teach yourself the rest, and I will be sure to include other videos that cover the topics that I avoided. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay, so if you're into that, please subscribe. I would like to thank Tommy Boy and Scope, who are part of the F-15 testing team, for taking the time to teach me the F-15. This video would have taken significantly longer without them. As there are a lot of videos that already go through the cold start, we are going to start this from a taxi position and talk about what you need to do after you start up. This is really focused on getting your comms ready, and then we will transition to navigation. In most BMS missions, the radios are standardized, so this should be fairly easy. If you find these channels are not working for you, then consult the briefing in your mission, as your mission may be using custom channels. The first thing we want to do is request permission to taxi. To do this, you will be using your UHF radio, which is located right under your HUD. Clicking this changes your channel. Channel 2 is the one you generally use to request a taxi. To do this, press T and cycle until you see request and taxi, which should be highlighted in blue.
Gator 1, 2 ship, F-15s, request taxi. Gator 1, taxi, target, Papa, Echo, and hold short, runway 18.
The ATC has now told us where to go, so we just execute that. This leads us to the nose wheel steering key map. As you taxi, you can use brakes, default key K, to slow down. Brakes in BMS are much weaker than in DCS, so go slow. Once you arrive to this point, you should hold short of the runway and switch to channel 3.
Gator 1-1, contact tower for takeoff. Switch to 29230.
And request a takeoff by pressing T and cycling until you see the command again. Again, it will be highlighted in blue.
Gator 1, 2 ship, F-15s, ready for departure.
Gator 1, Kunsan Tower, wing 220 at 10 knots, runway 18. You are cleared for takeoff.
The BMS ATC system will clear you for takeoff if the runway is clear. Once you are on the runway and lined up, you can begin your takeoff procedure. Remember to hold down the paddle key map. This is a dual purpose key map and it is important. Holding this on the ground locks your nose wheel steering so you can take off straight, but when your gears are off the ground, it's your countermeasure dispense. So map this in an easy to reach spot that you can press quickly and hold down. Once you have taken off, you can report that you are airborne on channel 4 and then switch to channel 6, which is your tactical frequency and AWACS.
Gator 1-1, contact departure.
Gator 1, airborne, 2 ship, F-15s, 1000. Gator 1, Kunsan, departure. Depart heading 065. Resume on navigation.
This now brings us into part 2, which is navigation. Navigation in the F-15C is a bit trickier and not as intuitive as the F-16. In general, the F-16, in my opinion, is a pilot's plane, while the F-15 is just built a little different, so I found some things not as intuitive. In the F-16, you can have a lot of information on the HUD, but in the F-15, it is spread out in a lot of different areas based on different modes that are selected. At spawn, your navigation will be set to B, or base. You can flip through the different steer points here. Now, how far away are we? This is where the ADI button comes in. If your ADI button is on, then you will get the distance information at the bottom right of your HUD. As this plane is still a work in progress as of November 2023, my general recommendation is to fly with ADI off most of the time, and periodically pressing it to get updates to see how far away you are from your steer point. This allows you to be more ready and flexible to engage contacts, as this is harder with ADI mode active. I would recommend to key map this button so you can quickly flick it on and off. So now that we selected our steer point and confirmed our distance to it, we want to head toward it. The easiest way to do this with the least amount of effort is to rely on your MPCD screen, or what I call the situation screen, and your vertical situation display, or what I call the radar screen. And this is where we get to the castle switch, which I would recommend mapping to a 5-way switch on your throttle. The manual explains this really well, and basically by manipulating these buttons you can cycle your selection between the two screens. Pressing castle aft in under a second selects the situation screen, and then you can castle right to uncenter the view, and then castle left to expand the area to see more. This will make it easier to see your flight plan. You will be able to see what steer points you have selected because it will be the yellow symbol without a number on it. This lets you know what direction to head into. As you get closer, you will want to use castle up to then use your radar screen, and the waypoints will appear on your radar to give you more precise information as you head toward them. I am purposely avoiding autopilot in this tutorial because this thing is still under works, but it can be found on page 18 of the manual. Between the ADI, the situation screen, and the radar, you have the information you need in order to get to where you need to go. As we get closer, we will begin to prepare ourselves to engage the enemy. From here, we will go to the master arm, make sure ADI is off, and then make sure our stores are ready. At the bottom right of the situation page, you will see an AA page. You click into this and you can see your stores. We will want to make sure our sidewinders are cooling, so we will have to get over to them. To flip between types of weapons, you use the weapon switch. For AIM-7 and AIM-120s, you use weapon switch CTR MRM, and for sidewinders, you use the weapon switch CTR SRM key map. Cannons are the third option, or weapon switch aft. As we are just getting to the AO, we will want to be on MRM. If you are carrying several different types of MRM missiles, you can switch between them by using the boat switch. This selects different types of weapons of a weapon type, so you can switch between different MRM missiles, like going from Sparrows to AIM-120s. At this point, we now use the radio system to stay in compliance with ACC to take off, and have learned navigation to get us to target, and we have prepared our jet to seek targets to engage. We can now begin part 3. We will approach this part by breaking down a normal BMS engagement step by step. The very first thing is to understand how we should ideally take a fight from a conceptual standpoint. The F-15 and BMS in general will outrange opponents based on its kinematic properties, its radar, and the range on its missiles. This means that we want to see them in advance so we can leverage our advantages to have a higher probability to win. There are exceptions to this, of course. For example, when a random MiG-31 appears while you are flying low. So step 1 is to see them as early as possible, to give yourself the space and time to position yourself to be in an ideal position to start the fight. First thing is first is to make sure your radar is scanning and is looking at the right direction and elevation. Let's start with heights. The radar elevation can be found here. Using the elevation axis will change this. Sometimes you may be too high and you will want to manipulate the radar to look lower to make sure you aren't getting giraffed by any sneaky MiGs. The cone of the radar can be seen on the situation page. If you slew all the way to the right on the radar, it will narrow it or expand it. You may want to focus in one particular area to have a higher refresh rate, or you may want to have more SAA at a slower refresh rate. This is also found on the axis page. Once you have set up your radar to make sure it is looking in the right direction, and with the right elevation bars, we can sit and wait until we see something, or we can call AWACS with Q and asking for the nearest bra. The AWACS system in BMS is phenomenal, and they can help to steer you to find contacts. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the one thing you do need to know is that in BMS the bra calls are based on Bullseye. Bullseye information on the TDC is located here, and as you slew around it changes. This is different from DCS, where bra calls are traditionally referenced from your position. To illustrate this, in this scenario the DCS AWACS would call bra 360 30 miles, altitude 20,000. This is in reference to us. As we are flying north, this just means that we have to keep going. In BMS, we have a bullseye, which is basically a reference point that all planes in the AO are aware of and orientate from. The bullseye may be 40 miles to our north. In this case, the bra will be 180, 10 miles, 20,000. So the AWACS is telling us the contact is south or 180 of bullseye, and it is only 10 miles from it at 20,000. Once you understand this, it becomes really intuitive and easy to operate with many people who are operating in the same area. Now, at this point, we can expect to see someone on radar, and we can get into the nitty-gritty by using the TDC slew axis. We can hover over a radar contact. From here, we have a really big decision to make, and this is where people seem to get lost the most. So to make this easy, I have broken this down into several options from the aggressive to the least aggressive. The first, most straightforward and aggressive option is to press lock twice and hard lock or SCT lock this contact. This focuses the radar on the contact and gives the highest chance to maintain a lock, but there are drawbacks. One, it alerts the enemy that you are hard locking, and from here they can bug out before you can even get in range. The other thing is that when you SCT lock, you lose situational awareness on everything else in your radar screen. You are committed, and even if you drop lock with auto acquisition switched down, you have already alerted the enemy that you have hard locked them. The less aggressive option is hovering over a radar contact and locking once, and then you enter into ND-TWS. This will help focus the radar on that contact but not alert them immediately. Additionally, it doesn't drop other contacts off the radar. This is a good way to track someone as you get closer to firing parameters. This is probably the default option you are going to use most of the time. To enter into STT, you simply lock again, and if you want to drop it, you go auto acquisition down. The last one which is really weird is the highlight mode. By hovering over a contact and going coolly forward, you can see two lines appear next to the contact. This is like TWS, but the radar is doing an additional update on this person to give you some information on them to see if they are cold or hot. This is a good way to keep track of someone in a busy area if you want to commit to them later. Highlight mode cannot really support a missile launch. You will have to go auto position forward while being in highlight mode to get into TWS, or you can just lock. This plane is still in development. At this time, it is my understanding that the highlight mode may change in the future. If you are watching this in the future, just know that you can rely on acquiring stuff by simply locking them with the TDC and then locking again to STT them. Now that we have gone through how to lock a target, let's go into how to fire. There are many tutorials on this, and for brevity, we are going to avoid a lot of details on this. If you want to go deeper on a certain subject, there are tutorials listed below that go deeper into the individual subjects. In general, to get your stick to connect, you want to understand the information that is on your HUD and your radar screen. This bracket breaks down into several key things. First is Rmax, or the maximum launch range to achieve a marginal probability of success. Basically, if you fire and the enemy reacts, then you will probably miss. RPI, the maximum launch range achievable with the existing steering setup or their speed and direction, ensuring a high probability of success. This can miss if they move aggressively. The next one is RTR, which is the maximum range when engaging a target that does an evasive turn and run maneuver. This is a high probability shot. This is a good one to take. The only issue is that waiting for this may leave you in a position where you could get fired on as well. Lastly is RMIN, which is the minimum distance, which is pretty self-explanatory. If you shoot too close, you may miss because your missile may not have enough time or space to move over to hit the target. How to maximize your engagement is a topic worth diving into, and there are many other videos that go into much better detail about this. See the link videos in the description for more details. Now that we have the absolute basics of BVR down, we can talk about the moments where you find yourself a little close for comfort. The best thing I have found is a super search mode. You enter this by hitting auto acquisition forward. And a really basic way to explain this is like a vertical scan on steroids and has up to 10 miles in range. Once you press auto acquisition down, you go back to search mode to default yourself again. If you do find yourself in a merge, a key thing to know is that the corner speed of the F-15 is around 350 knots, and that the radar input is actually pretty heavy. It is very easy to slip and slide in it, so watch yourself. Additionally, the size of the F-15 makes you believe that it has a lot of legs, but because of how thirsty the engines are, it has slightly shorter range than the F-16. You can use channel 13 to get in contact with air-to-air refueling tankers. I found air-to-air refueling to be really hard in this, so just keep that in mind. As a last note on this, IFF is still being modeled out, so at the time of this recording, it is not needed. Don't forget, you can always have the AWACS declare for you by pressing Q and asking them to declare. At this point, you should have enough of a foundation to be able to enjoy the F-15, but just note that our journey is not over. There are other areas to double down, like mastering the BVR timeline and understanding the different radar modes, which I lightly covered. Additionally, we didn't really talk about Link 16. It's pretty self-explanatory from the situation screen, but another topic to dive into. Additionally, the BMS devs are still fleshing this thing out, so things may change in the future. In the pinned messages, there is a curated list of other tutorial videos that cover the gaps in this video. I would recommend watching them after you have studied this video and played for a bit. They will be your next steps in getting deeper into this plane. As a final note, I want to mention one thing that I feel like does not get voiced over a lot. I would encourage you to think of yourself as a flight simmer, not as a DCS player, not as an IL-2 player, or just a BMS player, but as a flight simmer. One that can hop around between the different games and enjoy the strengths of each one. BMS is doing something that no one else is doing. It really is the best place to experience Generation 4 aircraft, and the fact that they have modeled a full fidelity F-15 to live within a dynamic campaign setting is something that should be applauded, and I hope this video gives you a chance to overcome the barriers to experience that. This video was made because a lot of people seemed interested but unable to get over the BMS learning curve. So I hope this video helped you. Let me know how you think I did in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, then please help me by subscribing and leaving a comment. Thanks and have a good one.